Okay, welcome back to my Let's Learn kind of play of Magic Realm on Tabletop Simulator. If you're listening to this, congratulations, you either have an interest in Magic Realm, or you are very bored and looking to fall asleep. One of the two. Either way, I hope I didn't overload you too much with the first video. I tried to keep it pretty light. We didn't even get to a turn yet, so you know there wasn't a whole lot of rules or anything crammed in there. But it might have just, you know, it's parsing information of what's important, what don't you really need to know, what's sort of flavorful, what's there to lure you in, or you know, things like that. All you really needed to take from the first video was the map always consists of the same 20 tiles. It's set up usually by players, but in this case randomly. The tokens that go on the tiles are all randomly placed, so you don't know the exact layout of how the map's going to be until you get into the game. You pick one of 16 different characters, each with their own advantages, disadvantages, strengths, weaknesses, so on and so forth. And all the characters start at one of 4 starting dwellings. I just realized it should be there. Each of which are placed on one of the 5 valley tiles, which don't necessarily have to be on the outer edge of the map, although they tend to be. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, that's all you really need to take from it for now. But this one, we're finally going to get to the meat of the rules. You're going to learn how to do a turn and how the core gameplay loop functions. Oh, you also learn about, like, victory points. So, victory requirements. We have ourselves set up here with the goal of getting 2 great treasures, which are certain specific treasures, which we'll find out about. Actually, I can show you that. I can show you that right now. So if we look here through the big deck of treasures, you see that some of them very distinctly have a red border around the edge of it. Those are the great treasures. So, looks like that. That's a great treasure. That's just a normal treasure. Great treasure, normal treasure. So if you just scan your eyeballs across here, you can see there's not too many great treasures in this pile. This pile has a handful more. Great treasure, great treasure, great treasure, great treasure. Yeah. They're in there. They're spread around. So yeah, like I said, at the start of the game, during setup, all those treasures are jumbled up, mixed up, and placed into different locations. So most of the treasures in the game are randomized, and you do not know where any of them are at the start. Some of them are not randomized. Specifically this board. Treasures within treasures. In other words, the location of these 6 piles, you need to find a treasure in order to access these 6, and that treasure is spread randomly somewhere. So these are pretty uncommon to find. And then, you know, some of these are also randomized treasure, such as the chest. But some of them are always here. Like the Enchanted Meadow always contains the True Steel Sword. Every single game. And a pony. A really nice pony. Yeah, so that's that. All right. So Right, victory requirement. So our goal is to get 2 of those great treasures by the end of the game. 10 points of fame, 20 points of notoriety, and 30 gold, not counting our starting gold and starting equipment value. Because essentially, like, if that wasn't in place, I could sell all my starting equipment and already have 35 gold in my pile. So I'd already have a VP just for doing that. That would sort of hinder me a bit, but still, that's the rule. You might also be wondering, well, Mangg, how long is a game? How long do I have to get 2 great treasures, 10 fame, 20 notoriety, and 30 gold? Well, you have a variable length. Technically, yeah, the players can all decide exactly how long they want to go for, a certain number of months. But the default length of a Magic Realm game is 28 days. So 1 month. And you'll see here, as we will get into soon, this chart is broken up into 28 rows. So signifying 28 days. So at midnight on the 28th day, the game is over. I don't know how victory point requirements work for multiple players, but if you fulfill all your victory requirements, you win. If not, you definitely lose. So yeah, 28 days might sound like a lot, but it's actually kind of tight sometimes. It's very easy to waste time in this game. It's very easy to just be doing things that do not contribute to getting your victory requirements. It's very easy to just sort of sit around and basically trying and hoping for some good dice rolls and just wasting a lot of time when maybe you should have just moved on. But okay, we'll get into all that very soon. Alrighty, so you have begun a game. You've picked your character. The map's all set up. You are ready to go. So, ready for the first turn. Each turn is broken up into a number of different phases. I don't know if they're called phases. Maybe that's not the term the game uses. But basically, there's the bird song phase. Then there's the sunrise phase. Then there's the lengthy daylight phase, followed by the evening phase, which ends with midnight. And then a new day starts. That's how the game works. Okay. In broad terms, daylight is when all the actual actions take place. So you're moving, you're trading, you're searching, you're trying to hide from enemies, you're hiring natives. That all happens in daylight. Evening is pretty much where combat happens. So if you want to have some combat, or if you're forced into combat, that all goes down during the evening phase. All right. So during the bird song phase, you are going to be writing down your actions for that turn. You are going to be planning out your turn. Now, when you're playing with multiple people, this is done privately. So no one else knows what any of the other players are doing or planning to do that turn. And that's a very interesting aspect. And even when playing solo, this leads to some interesting gameplay. So before you do anything, you need to plan on what you're going to do. So for our first turn, like I said, I would like to trade with the rogues at the inn just to see what treasures they have available. I'm probably not going to buy anything, so I'm only going to spend one of my 4 actions in order to trade. every character gets 4 actions. Well, not every character, but by default, you get 4 actions. 4 phases that you get to do each turn, each day. So as one of the 4 things, we're going to trade. So you have to write that down. It has to be recorded. Because everything is recorded before it happens. So it needs to be inked onto paper. Because you cannot change this. So there needs to be, a record of it. So our first activity is going to be a trade. So we just write down a T for shorthand. You don't need to write out trade. We know there's only one T action. So there you go. So first action we're going to do is a trade. Now, even though, every character gets 4 actions per turn, there are bonus actions. Like I mentioned last time, the Amazon gets to record and do an extra move phase each turn. So no matter what else I do with my other 4 actions, I always get an extra move for free. All right. So we're trading. And then we probably want to move. Because, we got to get out into the world. We can't just sit around all day. So I'm going to be moving to this second spot. And each spot on all these tiles, all these, numbered places, those are called clearings. So this would be Awful Valley Clearing 2 that I wanted to move to. That's the only one I can move to. So for shorthand, we write M for move, AV for Awful Valley, and then 2 for Clearing 2. All right, so that's the second action. All right, so that's the plan so far. It's pretty simple. I mean, hopefully you're still with me. Hopefully you're still following along. We can't go to 1 and 4 because those are technically, on a different path. Those are above us. We're in the valley. There are certain abilities that would let you do that, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So right now, our only path is to go to 2. And then the only path leading away from there is into the Borderlands at spot number 4 here. So we have to go into Borderland 4 if we want to continue on. But there's some issues with that. You see that Borderland 4, 5, and 6 are all much darker in color. That means that those are caves. And if at any point during your planned turn you enter into a cave, your number of actions gets cut down to 2 for that turn. So even though I'm not starting in a cave, if I wanted to move into this cave on my turn, I'm only limited to 2 actions. Now, like I said last time, bonus actions are very powerful because that does not affect my bonus action. So, like I said, no matter what else I do on my turn, I always get a bonus move. So, even though I've already done 2 activities, or I've planned 2 activities, I can move into number 4 as my extra move. But then, that would be the extent of my planned actions. Now that probably sounds fine. We get to trade, we get to move 2 spots, we're in the Borderlands, we're hiding out in the caves, we're having a great time. There are issues with this. And the issues are that, remember these tokens on all the tiles, and I told you that these determine where treasure locations are, which is good, but they also determine what sort of monsters can appear. And so essentially monsters will appear potentially. We'll get into the specifics later, but there is a chance that monsters will appear after the end of my turn. After my turn has all completed, I've done all my actions for the round, and we go into the evening phase. So at the end of the day, at the end of the daylight phase, which I'd have to skip over a lot of minutia here. Yes, at the end of the daylight phase, we get into the prowling denizens, which sounds much weirder than it is. Basically, that means that after all our actions have gone, for our turn, monsters will either spawn or potentially come to our clearing. So spawn and or come to our clearing, depending on you'll see. Which means the point I'm getting to is that if we move just blindly, essentially, into the Borderlands and we end our turn there, out in the open, there is a chance that we will be attacked at the end during the evening phase. And we will be forced into combat with whatever foes that the game decides to throw at us. Now, of course, combat is not the end of the world, but in this game, in Magic Realm, generally you want to be prepared for every combat that you're going to take on. Generally, you want to know the specifics of what you're facing, how many you're facing, how strong they are, how weak they, whatever, all the specific. The more knowledge you have, the more prepared you are for a fight, the better chance you have of surviving that fight. There are dice in this game, as you can see. Combat does revolve in some ways around dice rolls. But at the same time, there are a lot of combats that when you know what you're doing and you know how the game works, you don't even have to set up the combat because you know for a fact you're going to kill the monster without being touched. And that's just prep. It's just knowing how the fights work, knowing what the fight's going to be, and just being able to just do it. You don't even, there's no, in some situations, there is no variable if you know the fight beforehand. So in this situation, we don't know what these chits have to say. We don't know what's on the other side. So those could spawn anything from trolls to goblins to dragons to serpents to spiders. Some of those things we could handle. Plenty of those things we would die. Or it would be, very bad for us. And it's not necessarily, well, you get thrown into a fight and you're just stuck there in the fight and you have to fight your way through. Not necessarily. We can run from some things. But again, this is sort of determined by our weight. We can run from big, slow things, and we could run away before, he even throws a punch. And we would be completely fine in that situation. And that's a strategy for a lot of characters that aren't built for fighting. They tend to run from a lot of things, and they just run around and try and just fight where they can and grab loot and all that sort of stuff. Or they'll hire natives to fight for them, so on and so forth. The point is, generally, you want to be very wary of ending your turn in an unknown tile without being hidden. Hidden is very important. Learn to hide. And hiding would involve us flipping our token like that. Becoming hidden. When you are hidden, you cannot be attacked, essentially. Enemies will still come to you. They'll still be sort of on top of you, but they won't be able to attack you unless you attack them first. So being hidden gives you a big advantage, obviously, because being hidden means that, for one, you can run away. You can run away from anything when you're hidden, but you don't even need to, because you could just sit there and wait on that tile if you wanted to. Being hidden lets you ambush the enemy, and in a lot of cases, for some characters, if they're hidden at the start of the battle, it's a guaranteed kill. I mean, there's no question about it, because it's just a huge advantage, being able to attack something without them being able to counterattack. And being hidden means that you can just wait there on that spot till the next day, and they just won't touch you. They won't do shit to you. And then the next day you can just walk away, and you don't have to fight anything. So going into a tile while hidden is generally going to be the preferred strategy for most characters. There are characters that have to play a little riskier, such as the dwarf. He's more likely to just wander around and maybe hope for the best sometimes. But even the dwarf might want to occasionally play a little smarter or a little safer. So hiding, of course, is one of the actions you can take. Which means that if I move into Borderlands 4, that's the extent of my actions. I can't hide. I can rectify this in one of two ways. One, I can choose not to trade with the rogues as my first action, and instead I could hide and then move twice. Or you could move twice and then hide. Like I said, enemies won't appear until the end of your turn. So when playing solo, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. When playing with other players, it can. Basically, monsters can appear and move around. No, they can't appear. Oh yeah, maybe they can appear. They can appear and move around at the end of any player's turn. Player order for each day is determined randomly. But when you write out your actions and you plan ahead, you don't know the player order. So in other words, if I didn't hide beforehand and some other player went ahead of me into the Borderlands, they might plop down some monsters right where I was planning to go and I was planning to hide. And what you don't want to do is try and hide, or try and move in and then hide while there's monsters there. You would never do that voluntarily, but again, if other players are involved, they might change the state of the board in an unplanned way because you didn't go first, and then you might be fucked. So in our case, it doesn't really matter. But okay, so we could not trade, and we could hide and move twice because, like I said, we get the bonus move. That's one option. Another option is to basically wait a day. We could trade, and then we move here, and then we just basically wait out the rest of the day, and in the plan that next turn, next day, we're going to head into the Borderlands properly. I'm not really trying to like win this game or anything like that, so I don't mind delaying a turn. So let's amend this. Let's trade twice, just because you'll see. We'll move, and then I guess we'll just hide. And technically, I would hide twice because I mean it doesn't matter. I don't have to actually. I don't have to do anything really. No monsters are going to spawn on this tile because they can't spawn where there's a dwelling. So it honestly doesn't matter. There's no, I'm not at risk here, but I want to show you how the hide roll works. So we'll do that. All right. So once everyone has planned their turn, written it out, then and only then are you going to roll to decide which type of monster is going to be sort of active that day. Which monster is going to be prowling, they call it. And it's going to be one of 6. It's always going to be one of these 6. And so if you roll a 1, dragons are going to be active that day. They're going to be prowling. If you roll a 4, it's going to be giants and trolls. If you roll a 6, it's going to be bats. All right. This determines a number of things, of course, but essentially, again, this would help if I had flipped over some chits. All right, I won't ever go to the cliff, so let's just flip this over. All right, now I can explain these. All right, so the red one, this is called a sound chit or a sight chit, depending on what it is. This is a sound chit. They all have a number on it. That means they go on that numbered clearing. That's pretty simple. They also all have a colored symbol on them, or one or more, 1 or 2. That corresponds to the monster chart. That means that this Slither 6 tile here corresponds to dragons and serpents. All right. So in other words, if someone was on this tile, and only if someone is on this tile, if this was face up over here, but I was in the Borderlands, and dragons became active, this would not do shit. These chits are only ever active for any purpose when a character is on that tile at the end of their turn. All right, so if I was on this tile and dragons were active at the end of my turn, that Slither token would activate, and we would go over here and we'd look for Slither for dragons. And we'd see here, under this Lost City thing, Slither. So this is in mountains or caves, because technically that Slither tile could appear in either mountain tiles or cave tiles, but yeah. And then we would take the leftmost monster, so the leftmost dragon in this case. Because the Slither tile activated, and 1 is active. 1 is prowling. Dragons are prowling. So we'd take that, and we'd put it here. I know, I'm probably making it sound more complicated than it is. But you'll see Slither has the red symbol and the green symbol. So dragons and serpents. If dragons is prowling, we only put the dragon here. We don't bother with the serpents. And vice versa. If we get serpents, we don't put the dragon there. We just put this serpent. Actually, 2 serpents. You put the whole pile there. So that would be the case if green had come up as active that turn. All right. So the red ones, the ones that have the number on it, that go on that specific number clearing, when monsters spawn for those tiles, they go on that clearing. So they go like that. The other chit, the yellow one, these are called warning chits. These function in a similar way. They also spawn monsters. In this case, this spawns trolls or ogres and bats. So if trolls are prowling, it'll spawn trolls. If bats are prowling, it'll spawn bats. But the warning one, the yellow one, if that pops up, if that becomes active and is connected to the active monsters for the day, those monsters, in this case Bones, Cave is these 2 heavy trolls. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a mountain. All right, that's another good point. So you can see Bones is listed twice. Yeah, Bones is listed twice here. But one, it has the cave symbol here for the trolls. The giants have the mountain symbol. So depending on the type of tile that it's on, you can see the cliffs here are mountains. You spawn different things. So the trolls will never spawn there. Trolls never spawn in mountains. Ever. Ever. And similarly, giants never spawn in caves. Ever. So since that's a mountain bones, or bones M as they call it, we would spawn a giant with his club. But since it's coming from a warning chit, the yellow chit, which is not on a specific clearing, that this giant would instead spawn wherever the character is located. Wherever the character ended their turn, it would spawn right on top of them. So if they ended their turn in 5, it would go to 5. If they ended on 2, it'd go to 2. If they ended on 6 for whatever reason, it would go on 6. Along with whatever else troubles that they might have to face. Yes. So that's prowling monsters. Additionally, of course, it's not just spawning though. Because monsters, once they're spawned, they tend to stick on the map unless killed. So alright, let's take that giant again as an example. So say the giant's here. And I'm messing around on this slither token. Who knows what I'm doing there. Say I'm doing some activity. But I'm over here, the giant's over here, he's miles away, I'm not bothered. I plan out a nice turn where I sit around and I end on this 6 clearing. But then the monster roll, which like I said, happens after you plan out your turn. So you don't know which monsters are going to be prowling on any given day until after you've planned all your actions out. Say it comes up as the gray symbol. So that would be, where's the die? Here. So say that is the dice roll for the day. That means I carry out my turn, I end on Slither 6, and then afterwards, right as I finish my turn, the giants activate because they are the prowling monster for the day, which means they will move directly to where I ended my turn, and I'll have to deal with them. If instead, for that same day, we got spiders, which isn't present on this tile, and I ended my turn there, the giant wouldn't do shit. And depending on dice rolls, you know, if you get this, followed by this, followed by this, followed by this, followed by... I mean, you could go an infinite amount of turns where the giant never moves onto your space. I mean, eventually he probably will, but, you know, it's possible. It's a dice roll. It's luck. So you might get 5-6 turns sitting there without a giant bothering you, or the very next turn, the very turn that you end there, you might get the 4 and he's just, oh, how you doing? Okay. So it's a very intriguing system because it happens, if it happened before you planned your turn, obviously it wouldn't be as intriguing. You would have the full information. But since you have to plan your turns without knowing what's going to be active that day, or sometimes without knowing what chits are going to be in play on any tile, it becomes a lot more interesting. Yeah, I was just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Not really. Those are all the basics. So, yeah. After you plan out your turn, after everybody's planned out their turn, every day is going to start by rolling this die. So let's just, we've planned our turn, let's just roll and see how it goes. Alright, so we got the blue symbol. This would also be number 3, if you're not using this redesign or this dice. Because you could also just roll any d6. I could roll this and get 3, and it's the same thing. And so this tells you it corresponds to ogres, wolves, goblins, and the octopus. In other words, it's this blue line across here. So, playing by myself, it doesn't really matter. But if I was playing with other people, I guess I'd put this prowling token here so everyone can remember. Today, this day, the blue, number 3, is prowling. Alright. That might bite us in the ass, it might not. We're going to find out. Alright, so now that that's been rolled. When you're playing solo, now your turn just begins and you carry out your actions. If you're playing with other people, or if you've hired natives that lead themselves or lead a squad around the map on their own under your jurisdiction, you would also do this. They would also get thrown in the pool. But basically, you would determine randomly whose turn it is next, whose actions are carried out first, whose actions are carried out second, and so forth. But for solo, right now, with just the Amazon, we don't have to worry. So first, we're going to do a trade action. So a trade action does not initially consist of any dice roll. Basically, at the start of the trade action, I have to determine whether I'm buying, whether I'm selling, or whether there's no trade and I just cancel the action. So, notably, I can't cancel the action once I've decided to buy or sell. I think you can choose not to sell anything, but if you choose and say that you're buying something, you're gonna be making a bid on some item available. There's no option at that point, but that's not a big concern as long as you're dealing with the relatively amiable folk. So all right, we're dealing with the rogues, we're neutral with them, and we're going to be looking at their stock. So they always have workhorses, so they always have these 6 workhorses to start. You'll notice that there are differences. They have different gold values, so they cost different amounts. And when you're dealing with ×3 and ×4, I mean, there is significant difference between the two. They all have the H symbol there, which means that they all have heavy weight, which is really only a matter for their defensive value. So basically, anything less than a heavy hit doesn't bother them. It doesn't do shit to them. They can brush off a billion medium hits and it wouldn't mean anything. But as soon as they get hit with something heavy, they die. They're done. So that's that. And you can see like the warhorse up here at the order. That's a tremendous weight. So that can take heavy hits for days and days and not be bothered. Right. So that's that. And then the bottom is much like our sort of blue chits. It's got a letter followed by a number. For the most part, all you care about with that is that it determines what they can carry. So this horse can only carry light stuff. This horse can only carry medium stuff, heavy stuff, or tremendous stuff. And that's mainly, of course, where the gold value comes in. So the one that can only carry light stuff is the cheapest at 8 gold. Whereas the big boy, tremendous, he's up at 12. Now you'll also notice that all 6 workhorses give you an extra move phase. This is identical to our Amazon extra move phase. And if the Amazon had a horse, a workhorse, every turn she would get 2 extra move phases. Which is good. Horses are very nice. I mean, everybody likes horses. They're fucking expensive though. At 8 gold a pop. Or 8 gold for the cheapest workhorse, multiplied by 2 or 3 or 4. So chances are you're not going to have a horse early game. It's possible. It is possible. If you were friendly with the rogues and you managed to get like a workhorse priced at like ×1 with your starting 10 gold, you could buy a workhorse. But most people will not do that. So yeah, extra move phase, very nice. In the Book of Learning, they say that like the theoretical, like perhaps max number of phases, actions you could take in one turn is like 23 or 24 or something. Although, you know, that's pretty uncommon. So all right, the rogues sell those 6 workhorses if you're interested. But they also sell 2 treasure cards, 2 treasure items, completely random. Ooh, they could be anything. Now, in a game with multiple people, this would be private. You would look at these 2 cards, and except for some exceptions, you would put them back, and no one else would know what the rogues are selling except for you. Or if they had, you know, looked at what the rogues are selling. But that goes for pretty much anything in the game. You know, a lot of this information is private for you only, or for whoever has access to that information, unless you choose to just share and tell them what it is. That's how it goes. So let's flip. We're solo, so I don't really care. Alrighty. We've got cards. All right, so the amulet. This costs 5 gold. This gold value is both for buying it and selling it. So if I were to find this amulet somewhere and sell it to the rogues, they would give me 5 gold for it. But if I want to buy it from them, of course, it goes into the multiplier problem of where I might have to pay 10, 15, 20 gold for it. So, yeah. But I could buy this for 5 or 10 gold, perhaps. It would go into my belongings. This is a one-time use item, even though it's called an amulet. Actually, in the original game, it's classified as a potion because it's one-time use. This will cancel 1 curse or 1 spell cast in the same clearing. So, curse effects, a few things can curse you, notably the imp that lives at the statue. He always casts curse as his attack, which is really fucking annoying. And if we go down here to the curse table, this is rolled randomly every time you get cursed. So this one, ashes. Your gold is worthless and cannot be spent or given away. You can continue to add to your gold, but you can't subtract from it, and it counts as a value of -1 recorded gold for the purpose of, like, victory points. So, can't spend your gold, and it's worthless for victory points. That's pretty bad. Ill health. You can't rest. Weak. You can't be hidden. That's pretty bad. You know, especially if you're out in the wild somewhere and you need to get back to a safe harbor. Not being able to hide is very dangerous. So yeah, curses are generally shit. And normally they're kind of hard to remove. If you don't have a treasure or spell or something to remove them, really the only way that I have learned is by ending your turn at the chapel, which is up here. Remove all curses at midnight. Which is fine, you know, if the statue is like here, if it's right in this tile, and the statue's there, but the imp is around, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get cursed, but maybe I can get some treasure out of it. It's fine, because you just rush back to the chapel, and you're fine. You can't really die from curses, unless, well, you know, the hidden thing maybe, but yeah, the chapel's fine. But if you get cursed in the deep woods over here, that's a long fucking way to get back with a curse, or more curses. You know, if you get the curse where you can't hide, and you need to go all the way back to the Dark Valley over there. Yeah. Oh. So the amulet is potentially useful. It is potentially useful. But it's not worth me spending like 10 gold or something on it. Canceling 1 spell cast in the same clearing. It's really not at all useful for solo play. At least as far as I've learned. There are occasionally... Not for the Amazon. The Amazon has no magic capabilities. But there are times where you might want to cancel a spell that you have cast. But, you know, not for us. So again, amulet is worthless. The Flowers of Rest. The Flowers of Rest provide a magic source. of gold magic. So we're not going to get into spells now. I mean, maybe later in another video, but essentially to cast magic, you always need a magic source, which most of the time is going to be generated by the spellcaster themselves. But sometimes they might get a spell that needs, say, gold magic, and they can't really generate their own gold magic. So something like this could be very useful as just an unlimited source of gold magic. In addition to that, you can use this whenever you rest. I think it might be mandatory. I'd have to look it up. But if you're carrying this and you rest, it activates all fatigue chits in clearing. I'd have to really like look this thing up, actually. This is sort of confusing. In the appendix, like I don't know. I'm not gonna waste. It's not great because obviously, it'll essentially, if you have a bunch of fatigued stuff, it'll all recover, but then you fall asleep and you skip the turn. So skipping turn, not a good idea. So both of those are worthless. Obviously, neither one of those is a great treasure. It doesn't have the red border around it. So those are both pretty shit and pretty worthless. So the rogues don't have anything that we are interested in currently. That was the first action of our turn. We will continue on to the... Oh, I did say that if you do the buy, you have to bid on something. So we'll just try and bid on the 9 gold warhorse. Okay. So when you attempt to buy something, you roll on the meeting table corresponding to the level of relationship that you have with them. So right now we are neutral with the rogues. Before doing any interaction with the natives, or any sort of meeting interaction with them, oh, you'll see these cell charts. I think these are optional rules. Normally, like I said, you just get whatever's on the card, so don't worry about that. Right, so before you do any meeting interaction with a native, you can optionally buy drinks for all of them. Drinks cost... Well, basically, you have to buy a drink for every native that's on the tile, for on the clearing. So every native you're interacting with. Which means we'd have to buy drinks for all the natives. And I don't know where... Oh, yeah, okay. No, this stack's correct. Okay, good. So as you can see, there's 7 of them. We'd have to buy drinks for all 7. I think... I'm for some reason blanking on it. I probably knew this an hour ago, but... I believe it's 1 gold per person you're buying a drink for. So 1 gold per drink. Which means we'd have to spend 7 gold to buy them drinks. You would almost never do that. But if you do buy drinks for the natives you're dealing with, you get to roll 1 step higher. So if you're neutral, you get to roll on the friendly table instead, which is obviously a lot better. Neutral, you're stuck with 4 or 3 price. Where friendly, you might get 2 price, double price, or you might get to roll on the ally table instead. In which case, you might still get stuck with 4, but still. Okay, so we're not going to buy drinks. We're rolling on the neutral table. We're not even planning to buy anything. I mean, you know, the odds of this are slim, and we finally get to the dice rolls of the game. So, most rolls in the game are 2d6. So you're rolling 2d6 dice. Then, after you roll those 2 dice, you're going to take the higher number, and that is your ultimate result. So we got a 5, which means we're looking at the 5 chart, which is no deal, which is fine. What this means is, and I'll tell you that for almost all situations, a lower number is better. As you can see here, I mean, it's clear you want, you know, 1 or 2 or something. You don't want 6. But you roll 2 dice and you always take the higher one. So the odds, and again, when you become experienced with the game, you become very familiar with the odds for any given dice roll. So I can tell you, just offhand, the odds of us getting the trouble result here, the number 6 result, are about 30%, which is actually not great. And so oftentimes you'll look at a situation and be like, okay, I need to roll a 1 or 2 to really like make out on this situation. The odds on that are very slim. It's like 11% for you to end up with a 1 or a 2 result. Because there, I rolled a 2, but this is a 5. So this doesn't matter. This might as well not exist. I rolled a 5. That's all that matters. All right. Very interesting little system. And so that means that when you have certain abilities that let you roll only 1 die for certain activities, that's very nice. Like, the Woods Girl. The Woods Girl gets to roll 1 die if she hides. No. The Woods Girl gets to roll 1 die for any activity she does, for any action she does in a woods tile. So any tile that has the word woods in it. So that's why I think I mentioned last time, she really likes the deep woods, because she can hide there for only 1 die. She can search stuff there for only 1 die. It's very potent. The dwarf has a similar thing when he's in a cave. So yeah, being able to roll 1 die is very good. Also, being able to subtract from a die roll is very good. So like the Amazon, for her aim ability, she gets to subtract 1 from each die roll whenever she rolls on the missile table. So that means essentially you can never roll a 6. Also, this would become a 1 result, which is really good. Snake Eyes is the best roll in the game. But yeah, if you have that -1 thing, even if you were to say roll a 6, it would be subtracted 1 and you'd end up with 5 instead, which for like meeting with neutral characters, that means you never have to roll on the trouble table. You never get the trouble result. So yeah, stuff like that's really potent. All right. So we ended up with no deal. So no problem there. I could do a second trade, but that was really only if I saw something I wanted to buy and I missed out on it the first time. That's not the case, so we're going to skip that. Then my third action was to move. So there we moved. Also, I could have hired the rogues, which I don't want to get, it's a bit too, I don't want to get into that right now, but you can see you could hire a rogue. This one only costs 1 gold. Now that price would probably end up at 3 or 4 gold, but you could hire them to accompany you for 14 days. So they would hire you for a full 14 days, and at the end of the 14th day, if you hadn't rehired them by that point, if you hadn't extended the terms, they would fuck off. So that's potentially good, but we're not going to bother with that. So then the final action of our day is to hide. So for that, we're going to roll on the, oh no, there's no hide table. It doesn't need to list that. Basically, we roll 2d6, and as long as we don't get a 6, we are hidden. There you go. We got a 6, so we did not hide. Now in this case, it didn't matter, sometimes it will definitely matter. So like I said, you have a 70% chance of hiding under normal circumstances. Okay, that's the end of the day. That's the end of the daylight phase. So now prowling monsters would kick in, but there's nothing on this tile, so we don't have to worry about it. Like I said, right now, even if, say, this dice roll had been a 1, and this was for some reason revealed, nothing would happen on this tile because no one ended a turn there. So things are not constantly popping off across the board. It's all just based on where the characters are. Which is fine. We don't need to bother with the other parts of the map. So then the evening phase commences. And technically, the evening phase commences whether you have enemies with you or not. And this basically means that, like, you can do certain activities during a combat, even if technically you're not fighting anything. I won't go into the logistics of it because we're not going to be doing any of those things, but yeah, like spell casting and stuff. Spell casting primarily takes place during combat. So you might be casting spells just during the evening phase, which is technically a combat, even though you're not fighting anything. But I might be just bogging you down at that point. All right, so then midnight happens and we move on to the next day. So let's plan our next day. We're going to be moving into the cave here at 4. So we only get 2 actions. We do get a free move. So the free move will be to move into Borderland 4. And the shorthand for that is going to be MBL4. Move Borderlands 4. Now, like I said, normally in multiplayer game, you probably would hide first, but whatever. Then I have to decide what I'm going to do from there. We could double hide. Double hiding is often recommended over just doing one hide action because you have a good chance of failing one hide. Like I said, you have a 30% chance of failing one hide. There you go, that's a failure. But the odds of failing 2 hides in a row are a little slimmer. Okay, I mean, there I failed both in a row, but it doesn't really help my point, I guess. But yeah, generally you want to double hide, if possible. If you're trying to be safe, you want to double hide. So we're just going to do the move, and then we'll double hide, and then we will get to see what's going on with the monsters. So move, Borderlands 4, hide, hide. That's our turn. We're all planned out, so we're going to roll the prowling die. We've got giants and trolls. That is a number 4 if you're curious. So then now that that's ready to go, and we can move this just for demonstration purposes. Now again, I don't know if giants and trolls are going to spawn. I have no idea if they could ever spawn on this tile for the rest of the game. That's entirely determined by these 2 things, which I cannot see. As I mentioned, there are certain ways to view face-down chits in other tiles, like from a distance, but we're not going to cover that right now. So let's do our turn. We're going to move here. Now, this stuff gets revealed at the end of our turn. So it's not revealed yet. I still don't know, but we're going to do our 2 hides. So let's roll them bones. Looking for anything but 6s. There, we got a 6, so that's a failure. And for our second one, we got a 2 and a 3, so that is a success. We are hidden. So now no matter what pops out of there, whatever spawns out of hell, it will not attack us this turn if we don't want it to, because we're hidden. So all right, let's flip it. We have ruins. Ruins is the warning chit. So that's the one that will spawn right on your person if it activates. That is goblins and wolves and stuff. Primarily goblins. The wolves only spawn in forests. Yeah, so really we're just talking about goblins with that. So that means that goblins will at some point spawn here if we wait around long enough. As for the other one, the sound or sight chit, this is a site. That means it's a looting site. So this is a place to collect loot from. It's a statue. So it's statue 2, so it goes on the 2 spot. That means that anything that it spawns will come to the 2 spot. It will spawn on the 2 spot. If, say, the purple comes, okay, so say purple comes up for the day, and I wait around and it spawns on the statue, and then I'm somewhere else here, say I'm on number 6, waiting around, and purple comes up again on another day, whatever is there will come to me. I think I mentioned that before when we were talking about the giant thing, but just to reiterate, it's not like it will never leave that spot. So, okay, since we rolled giants or trolls, we rolled a 4. The ruins is only connected to 3, so only dealing with 3. The statue is only dealing with 5, so nothing will spawn this turn. Absolutely nothing will spawn. The statue is a special one. It's a treasure location, which means all the treasure locations have their own unique monster, or not technically unique in some of these cases, but it has its own special spawn. So the statue spawns the imp. This is the thing I mentioned earlier that attacks with a curse. He's very annoying. He's very hard to kill without getting at least 1 curse on you. He's not like hard to kill per se, although a little bit. He's very fast, which contributes to it. So it's just hard to kill him quickly before he does a curse or 2 on you. You will eventually kill him. I mean, curses cannot kill you in battle, so eventually you'll kill him. It's just annoying. He's just annoying. But he's protecting the statue. Now, the statue is mostly spells. Yeah, it has 3 spells on it and 3 treasure cards. So those are 2 separate actions. Basically, you're either looking for spells when you're on that tile or you're looking for loot. But this is a good opportunity for me to tell you how to loot a place. So for our next turn, we're in a cave, and this one we're on, number 4, doesn't directly connect to number 2 there. So we actually have to go through 6, then to 3, then to 2. So it's going to be, I think, a couple days before we get there. We're going to free move to 6. Then we're going to move normally to 3. Now that's all our turns. Well, no, the free move does not count. So moving to 3 is one of our 2 actions, and then we're going to hide. So we're only doing a single hide. I'm going to be taking a bit of a gamble there. But if we end on 3, we get to start the next turn with 4 actions. If we end on 6, we start the next turn with only 2 actions. That's kind of a big difference if we want to loot this statue quickly before the imp shows up. So that's the plan. So our next turn is going to be move BL6, move BL 3. Was it 3? I forgot. It was 3. Yeah, move BL 3. So, and then hide. Normally, if you did not have that extra move action from the Amazon, you would just be able to move to 6 and then hide. And you're very limited in caves normally. So extra actions of any kind are really good. All right, so that's our planned turn for our 3rd day. We're going to roll the monster die. We got serpents and demons. We got the green symbol, number 2. You can see that color, green, is not on either one of these, so we're safe for the day, no problems. Which is great. That means that I can fail the hidden roll and it doesn't even matter. And so we can move to 6, move to 3, and honestly, it doesn't even matter if I roll hidden because nothing is going to spawn. We know that for a fact. So, also, I should note, the hidden status goes away every day at the start of your turn. So every day at sunrise, you become unhidden. So each day you have to re-hide. There I did hide, so whatever. All right, so that's all good. That's all good. Next, we're gonna move on to number 2, onto the statue, and then we're gonna begin to search for it. Now, even though we know where it is, in a broad sense, we know that it's in this second clearing. We don't know exactly where the statue is. We don't know where it is where we can start, like, digging, you know. So looting a treasure site is a 2-step process. First step is going onto the tile and looking for it on the clearing. And then once you found it, then you can begin looting it. Fortunately, those are all part of the same action, the search action. So we can do move BL 2. That's our free action. And then, depending on how bold you wish to be, you could do 4 search actions. Or you could do 3 search actions and a hide, 2 search actions and 2 hides, however you want to do it. Let's go and be somewhat bold and do 3 search actions and a hide. So that means we get some searches in, but we'll get a hide in and hopefully hide in case either the goblins show up or the imp shows up. And I'll just tell you that if the goblins show up, that's going to be a very complicated fight. If the imp shows up, a less complicated fight. So less complicated, but more annoying. The goblins are actually a good fight for us, potentially. It's just a lot lengthier of a thing, especially for me to explain to you. So we'll just see what happens. Let's roll the monster die. All right, we got serpents again. So again, we're perfectly fine. We don't have to hide. We don't have to worry about anything. So we move on to the statue, and now we begin our searches. So we look to the locate. Technically, if you were on a mountain tile, which we are not, if you're on a mountain tile, you could instead roll on the pier table while searching, which this basically lets you look at, like, hidden paths, or this lets you look at face down chits that are in other tiles. So let's see, what's a mountain? This is a mountain. So if I was in this mountain tile, I could peer into, say, this tile and look at these chits without actually going there. And so that way you could see, oh, is there any treasure that's there, or is it just monsters and I can not, you know, I could just ignore it. Or maybe you're looking for the monsters and you want to go there instead. Anyways, but for us, just searching for the statue, we want to roll on the locate table. All right, so you can see if we rolls 5s or 6s, nothing happens, which is bad. If we get a 4, we get to cross site chits off our discoveries list. That basically means that we have found the statue. We found whatever site we're looking for. And then we can start to loot it. So we want 4. And you can also see number 1, if we rolled snake eyes, is our choice, which means we could also look at the discovery. We could also discover the statue. 2s and 3s are basically just like hidden passages, secret passages, which I won't get into right now. So essentially, we're searching until we roll a 4. That's it. So that we got a 6. That's no good. Nothing happens. There we got a 6 again. Nothing happens. And there we got a 5. Nothing happens. So that was our 3 searches for the day. All right, pretty simple. I'm not even going to bother rolling the hide because it doesn't matter. Next day, let's just search 4 times. No hiding whatsoever. So I'm definitely taking a risk here in case monsters show up. But I'm really determined to try and find the statue and get some loot real quick. All right, let's roll the monster die. We got giants and trolls. We got a 4. Gray. That is not on the board, so again, we are perfectly safe. No concerns. We can just roll our 4 searches in peace. First one is a 5. Second one is a 5. Third one is a 6. And fourth one is a 6. Okay. So that was an entire day wasted. Absolutely nothing happened whatsoever. And that's why I said early on that it's very easy to waste time in this game, surprisingly. I mean, you could sit here for another 10 days and never find the statue just because of dice rolls. It's possible. And so, and really in a real game, I would not be looting the statue because it's mostly for spells. It would not be worth it to spend any real amount of time here. But just for the purposes of showing you how looting works, we're going to try it. So let's do it again. I don't want to go too long. I really am just hoping to trigger a fight so I can segue into the next video. But all right, monster dice again. There you have it. We have the imp. So at the end of the day today, after all my actions, the imp is going to show up on my spot, on the statue. First search is a 6. Second search is a 4. We have found the statue. So on our sheet, we're going to tick the statue thing. We have discovered its location. So for the rest of the game, we always know exactly where the statue is. We can always go there to immediately loot from it. If other players wanted to loot from the statue, they would have to do that same process. They would have to come here and start searching until they found it. Unless I was also on the same tile, on the same clearing, and I pointed it out to them. I could share that information with them if we were both right here on the same spot. And sometimes that'll happen. But all right, that was my second search, I think. I'm going to assume. So now that we found it, now we can instead of locating with our search action, and like I said, this is all search, which is great. You can just combine it all into one. So now we can just switch over to the loot table. So the loot table is very simple. If you roll a 6, you take the 6th treasure, counting from the top down. If you roll a 3, you take the 3rd treasure, counting from the top down. What this means is the less treasures that are in the pile, the harder it is to grab another treasure. And this is just what I love about this game. It's just these incredibly just simple and yet, you know, sort of ingenious mechanics of like, yeah, it would take longer and longer to find the last scraps of treasure. Whereas at the start, it's very easy to just see all this treasure in sight. It's just clever mechanics that I really like. So, all right, we're going to roll on this. There's only 3 treasures here. Remember, there's 3 treasures, 3 spells, and it's a different table if you want to get a spell. So we're just trying to get the treasure that's here. So that was a 6. There's no 6th treasure, so we get jack shit. We need a 3 or less. That was 5. But for the purposes of demonstration, let's say it was a 3. Let's cheat a little bit. All right, so now we get the 3rd treasure from the bottom. So that's 1, 2... Actually, no, that would be the bottom one. It's the bottom card, right. So it's the bottom card, because there's 3 treasures. 3 spells stocked on top of 3 treasures. All right, so the treasure that we found in the statue is the Deft Gloves. This is a really good one. This is a really good one. So first of all, the Deft Gloves let you roll 1 die when you're looting. That's fantastic. So that means that right now, like when we're looting this statue, instead of rolling 2 dice and take the higher one, we just roll 1. Which right there, I would get the 2nd treasure. Whereas if I rolled 2 dice and took the higher one, the odds of me getting the 2nd treasure, so getting 1 or 2 on 2 dice, are very slim. So that's a huge boon for looting. That in itself is a great treasure. Although, let me note, it's not technically a great treasure because it doesn't have a red border. Maybe it should. But for mechanics purposes, it's fantastic. And that's just the first part of its benefit. Second part is it's worth 6 notoriety as long as you're carrying it. So as long as it's in your belongings, it adds 6 notoriety to your total. And remember, we need 20 in order to fulfill our victory requirements. So that's 6 out of 20 just for holding on to this. If we sell it to somebody, which I would never do, most people would probably, you might, depending on your victory requirements, you might. If you don't care about notoriety or the looting, if you're at the end of the game, but you need gold, you might sell it. And if you sold it, you get 10 bucks. Which isn't an insane amount, but it's not terrible. Probably should be worth a bit more. But there you go. If you sell it to the order at the chapel, so specifically seek them out and sell it to them, you get 10 gold and you get 5 fame added to your total. So you would lose the 6 notoriety because you no longer possess it, but you get 5 fame added to your permanent total. So if you don't give a shit about notoriety, you didn't care about that for your victory requirements, but you want gold and fame, well, there you go. The last thing it does, and probably the most important, is it acts as a fight L2 chip. And we are going to learn what that means next time, because we are going to be encountering the imp. The imp has spawned on our spot. We are not hidden. So we're going to be entering into a combat with this bastard. But that's for next time. Again, I hope I'm not bogging you down too much. I'm trying to really keep it as a simple tutorial. Like I said, this is not really going to teach you everything you need to know. You're going to have to look for supplemental sources if you get into this. I highly recommend this document, the Book of Learning. This is mainly how I learned to play. There is a digital app called Realm Speak, but I don't recommend it for learning how to play just because it handles so many things for you, I guess. Like the combat is just going to whisk by without you really understanding what's happening. And the combat is the most difficult part to learn. So, yeah, I recommend going through this Book of Learning. It's longer than the rule book. It's like 280 pages. But it'll go through 16 scenarios, one for each of the different characters in the game, and it's going to teach you bit by bit everything that's going on. It's very cool. But if you're more visual, you can just stick with me for a little while to get the basics down. Alrighty, my name is Mangg. Game watching has been Magic Realm. And I'll see you fine folks in the next part.